The day. It is almost Munchies and Miller time. And I tell you, things will be fried, and there will be ooey gooey, cheesy, yummy food. All right. Before I introduce the next speaker, one of my jobs as a conference producer is one, staring out into the ether and wondering what you guys are going to need to know a year from now, 2 years from now. But it's also fun talking to various industry experts about what they're doing and spotting a greater, I think the word is gestalt, of putting all these things together and seeing the greater power of a whole. And Jon Ann and I started talking once about a lesson that Google learned about writing developer docs in foreign languages. And it was interesting, and she's going to talk about that. But I realized there was a bigger lesson to be learned here. And the lesson to be learned is it's just amazing what you can learn if you actually listen to your customers, right? How many people in this room work in a very conservative company who won't let you talk directly to the customers? Yeah? Okay. Penny wise, pound foolish. So part of your job is to build the business case on why you need to talk to the audience and what the company, and you promise you won't break them, right? But Jon Ann from Google, come on up and let's talk about lessons you learned from listening to your customers.
I don't know if my mic is turned on, but it is. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here, and I am glad to see all of you here, especially at this very late hour after a long day. The reason I'm so excited is that I worked on a really great project last year with a team of UX researchers at Google. And what we did, I work on consumer help centers. So that's the online help centers for free Google products like Gmail, Maps, Docs and Drive, Photos. And we wanted to get a handle on the quality of our translated content. So we had a panel of various language experts review emails and articles, a batch of emails and customer service emails and help articles in 11 countries. And what we found, the findings were just really, really surprising to us. I think we went into it thinking we sort of knew what was what, but we got a lot of really surprising insights, and that's why I'm here today, to share those with you and tell you a little bit more about what we found in 11 countries. Okay, so to get started, it probably helps to know a little bit about Google culture. Does anyone here have a corporate value statement or a list of values that you pledge allegiance to? Yeah. At Google, one of our values is to be googly. You may have seen this in a movie. So what does it mean to be googly? It means different things. In one context, it means don't hog the electric chargers in the parking lot. In terms of help content, it really refers to our voice and tone. We want to have a googly voice and tone. We want to be friendly. We want to be easy to use. We want to be conversational, maybe a bit playful, and we definitely want to be concise, no wasted words, direct and to the point. And I want you to hold on to that thought because I'm going to come back to it in a little bit. Also, I made up my own name for this session. And I'm very sorry to this woman's descendants for butchering her quote, but it just worked for me. So good intentions are not sufficient to solve our content problems. We had a lot of good intentions, and that's what I'm going to tell you about. Most of them blew up in our face. And this is what was supposed to be showing when I said I worked for the Google Help Centers. So what does googly look like in terms of help articles? I'll give you an example. I assume everybody here is familiar with Google search, but not everybody is. And there are actually lots of ways to do a Google search. You can type in a box and get a search. You can search with your voice. you can do an image search. And a section of one of our help articles was about this image search. And it said, it was very simple, one section of a larger article. I think it was an instruction of 4 very simple steps. And the example it gave was, right-click on an image, and you might see something like, search Google for emperor penguin. And I love that example because talking about image search, you want something photogenic, right? And emperor penguins are nothing if not visually appealing. Aren't they cute? They look kind of like people, and they look like they wish they had fingers so they could take your picture. So I love them. And the only thing cuter than them, perhaps, is they're babies. They already know how to tilt their heads and be adorable. But honestly, what I think about this example really doesn't matter, because we're not writing for me. We're not writing for ourselves. We're writing for our audience. And in this case, it's an international audience. And so what really matters is, how did this example go over with them? You know this doesn't end well, right? They hated it. They absolutely hated it, really. I could watch it forever. I was so glad it worked into this context. The reason they hated it, there were several reasons they hated it. The kindest reason that they hated it was they said it was just distracting. It's like you're reading along this, straightforward instructional text, and all of a sudden there's this kind of random reference to emperor penguins. And it was just kind of jarring and took them out of what they were doing. More typical, though, were comments like, maybe this is funny in English, but it's not funny to me at all. My favorite comment was in Dubai. They said, I don't even know what this is. We don't have penguins. But the one I think we really needed to take to heart and that really taught us a lesson was this comment from Japan. It's not appropriate for help where the user's having difficulties. And I think that's absolutely true. And in terms of being googly, I think this really showed us that, I think the way for us to think about it is, let our products be googly and delightful. People aren't coming to our help center to be delighted. They don't care about our wit, they don't care about our whimsy, they don't care about our sparkling prose. They just want to get out of there. They don't want to be there to begin with. So once they get there, they just want to get out. So I think probably the more googly thing to do is respect that and not kind of overload people with unnecessary cuteness. Okay, so that's one example, but to put it in a little bit more context, we do this on a massive scale. We have more than 5,000 articles in our help centers, 65 help centers, and I don't know about most of those, but our top ones at least are translated into 44 languages. So we have a lot going on there. And we realized, actually a couple things converged. A few years ago, our users outside of the US outnumbered our users inside the US. So our translated content kind of took on a more top-of-mind priority. And that also made us realize there's really a lot we don't know about our translated content. Is it meeting the needs of our international users? Is it friendly and easy to use? Is it of the same caliber, the same standards as our English source? And are there cultural references that we need to be taking into account that maybe we don't realize? So we decided to find out. We had kind of a larger project, kind of more of a company goal, that we wanted our translated content to be, in our top markets at least as good as the English content. And the way to find that out is to, of course, assess where we are now with our English, with our translated content. So the decision was made, if we're going to do this, we're going to go really big. We're going to get a range of people with a range of language expertise. We're going to go into some of our top markets in person and listen to what they have to say. So that's what we did. We engaged with a consulting company called Innocuous. We gave them a giant task. Said, okay, Innocuous, we're going to do this in 11 markets, and in each of those 11, we want you to find us a blogger, a journalist, either a translator or language instructor, and a copywriter. And for them to find one, they really needed to find 3 or 4, because we wanted to choose, find the ones that we thought were most suitable. So that was a big task. They gathered all those people together, miraculously, and then we sent them a big batch of articles, emails, kind of sensitive emails about financial, refunds, or maybe your account is blocked, so sort of sensitive topics. So they could review those, and they looked for 4 things. They looked for a voice and tone, general readability, terminology, and humor and cultural references. Very rigorous. I won't go into all of the things they did. Yes, I will. I mean, they had to read all of these articles. They did surveys, they did questionnaires, they did rewrites, they did all kinds of pre-work before we even landed. So, that again. So when we did land, we did a couple days workshops in each market that Innocuous facilitated for us. And that sounds like a detail, but it's actually not. I think the fact that they facilitated and moderated these sessions for us was actually key to the success, because we were able to just sit back and listen. Listen, listen, listen. Obviously, we interacted with the people some, but our main job was to listen, and we really learned a lot just from kind of off-the-cuff comments. So when we talk about listening to your customers, I think that's why being there in person was much more valuable than if we'd had them send us reports, for example. Example of what we learned off the cuff remarks. You guys might know this. I did not know this. This random comment from someone in Thai who said, since we don't have spaces between words, these long sentences are really hard to parse. What? You don't have spaces between words? No, only between sentences. I had no idea. And that really crystallized for me, we know we're not supposed to write long sentences. And we know that we kind of do anyway sometimes. But that really showed us, or showed me anyway, when we let those things through, by the time they get translated into a language like Thai, and it's basically one long word, we're torturing these poor people. So we don't like to let those things slide anymore. We've really cracked down on sentence length. Another comment was in Indonesia. They don't have tenses. I didn't know they don't have tenses. They don't. If they want to convey tense, they have to add words. So I eat tomorrow. So again, we send them long sentences. They have to add to it. We've given them really difficult text to deal with. So, lots of lessons. So where did we go? We went to all these places. I won't read them to you, but I had a great year last year. I traveled, I calculated it, 126,000 miles, and then I calculated that, and it's like halfway to the moon. I thought that was so cool, and then I thought, I don't think you want to be halfway to the moon. I think you want to either be to the moon or stay home, but halfway to the moon. So some of the things we found. Oh, let me show you some pictures. These are our Arabic droid statues. The very colorful one in the middle, I think, is soccer references in Brazil. And then we have our little Russian droid, stuffed droid on the right. This was Dubai. The woman on the left is a fashion blogger. And the man next to her is a TV journalist. And I believe the man on the right was the copywriter. And this was Japan. And this was kind of a card sort exercise we were doing on voice and tone in Spain. This is really interesting because across all of these markets, one thing we learned was one issue kind of stood out, became like really rose to the top as the thing that made our content the most difficult to read. And it was feedback that we had never, ever heard before, completely new to us. And that was that we were repetitious. Repetition. And repetition in several forms. Repeating words. Usually for us that was product names or just the word Google more than once in a sentence. Repeating concepts. Some of our titles and subheadings would say the same thing, or here's a little subheading and then the intro under it says the same thing. And that was really revealing to us, of course, because as editors and writers and content strategists, the way we think of repetition, to the extent that we think of repetition, is that it's wordiness. So of course you don't want to be wordy, so of course you don't want to be repetitious. But that wasn't what they were talking about. That isn't at all what they were talking about. They were saying, they really attached like bad intentions to us. They said, you're talking down to us, you're condescending, you think we're not smart enough to get it the first time, so you keep saying it. They said, you're wasting our time. The article that this came up in most blatantly is called Create Your Google Account. And it must have said create your Google account 8 times in that article, very short article. Well, create your Google account, that's 4 words. And these are language people, they love words. It really annoyed them to have to read those 4 words more than once. So to them, that was just wasting their time. If you're going to say the same thing with no different context, no added value, you're wasting our time. And then the clincher, again, never could have seen this coming. The clincher was that they thought it didn't respect their culture and their language. Because this came out most clearly in Thailand. The translation of an article about Gmail, it just said Gmail several times, and they said, this is not at all how we would say it or write it in Thai. So when you give us this article that has this completely unfamiliar cadence to it, the message that sent to them was, you don't care enough to get it right. You don't care enough about our language. You don't care enough about us as your users. So that stung. And as a result of this, the editors and writers on our team, repetition is the main thing we're focusing on this year, just getting rid of it. And now it kind of jumps out of us like crazy. And it's kind of a fine balance there too, not to repeat and then also not sound like you've just like gone crazy in a thesaurus trying to find synonyms. So, learning process. This is kind of where I got my title, about our good intentions. Lots of things had exactly the opposite effect that we intended. This is from an article about... You're supposed to be reassured by that, not laugh. This is from an article about Gmail, adding your other email accounts so that they come into your Gmail inbox. Don't worry, none of your data has been lost. It's just in a new place. Not the most elegant wording, but that's a reassuring message, right? That means that's good, that your stuff isn't lost. Well, no, it wasn't. I wasn't worried till you said don't worry. And I had that exact reaction when they said that. I kind of inwardly chuckled a little bit. And then I thought about it some more, and it made perfect sense to me. Sort of like if you really think about it, what you're saying is, if you're telling me this, then obviously there's something going on here that you need me to not worry about. You know, what is that? I don't know. And I think this also gets into empathy, kind of. So these reassurances create anxiety. And I think it's supposed to be reassuring, it's supposed to be empathetic, and everything we read about, you know, content and customer service, you know, you have to be empathetic, you have to show them you care. And I see this a lot in emails that come to me that say, we understand how frustrating it is when you forget your password every 3 days. And I think that wording, I see it so often, so that must be sort of like what stuck. But I don't have any data around this. This is more opinion than anything, but I would say, I don't think that's empathy. I think that's checking off a box that says, put empathetic wording here. And again, you can sort of think about this in your own context, but for help content, I think really being empathetic is understanding, like we said earlier, they don't want to be there. They will do anything they can do first. They will play around for an hour trying to figure it out themselves. They will get the kid down the street. They will ask anyone they can find so they don't have to go to a help center. So to me, what's truly empathetic is to realize that and just get out of their way. Just get out of their way. You don't have to say you understand, because it probably rings false, and be empathetic by respecting their time and not by giving them, you know, cliches, I guess I would call them. I'm running over, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. Another thing we do, Google's a big company. So at the bottom of our help articles, just to show that there is a person behind what you're seeing here, we'll put, you know, an avatar and the writer's name. Ashley's our accounts expert. She wrote this page, she wrote this article, leave her feedback. She'll read your email or your message, and, you know, here's Ashley. So by putting Ashley at the bottom of these articles, the idea being person behind the article, that made people think that Ashley was completely invented. Just a first name and an icon seems like a made-up person. It made them distrust us. It's supposed to make them trust us. It made them distrust us. And again, in Dubai, they said, we don't have people named Ashley. Okay, this is the big dramatic one. And I'm sharing it with you because it's dramatic. But the real reason I'm sharing it is that it kind of hammers home 2 more points. One, that the most innocuous thing that you would never think would be problematic can be. And 2, again, I don't think we would have gotten this without being there. I think if someone had issued us a report, this never would have come through. It never would have risen to the level. Okay, you ready for the phrase that rocked the world? Remember that Google will never ask for your password. Yeah. Again, this is a good thing. That way you know if someone calls and says, hey, what's your wallet password? You know that you're not going to want to give it to them. So here was the problem. And this one was kind of isolated, but you know, there are other examples in other countries. In Russia, remember that is the way their propaganda posters start. It's wording that we associate with propaganda, and it has no role to play in modern communications. I could visibly see them kind of shuddering when they read this. It evoked such a negative emotion in them. They weren't playing around. They meant it. It's like, I don't even want to read this. Who knew? It reeks of our Soviet heritage. We all remember those posters. We had a fair age range, but most of out of the 4 people that on our panel, probably 3 of them were old enough to remember being in elementary school and seeing these posters. And this poster I just found. It wasn't one that they brought to my attention, but it translates to something like, remember that the enemy is crafty and tricky. So you can see why they don't want to see that. They do not want to see that. Okay, so remember at the beginning I said hold on to that thought about concise writing. So I've had a year to sort of think about this and analyze it and build trainings around it and do all kinds of things. And finally, the epiphany came that in all of these cases, remember that, don't worry. We have other examples, it's okay. We have phrases like this all through our help content. It seems like every single instance where we sort of inserted words to try to deliberately, let's be empathetic, let's be reassuring, that is where we got in trouble. And in every case, those were completely unnecessary words. If you took those out, you lose nothing. You don't lose the meaning at all. In fact, you probably improve the experience because it's more concise. And if we had just stuck to our fundamental writing principle of no wasted words, nothing extra, straight to the point, we could have avoided a lot of this. And like I said, this caused real distress to people. They took it hard. You know, like I said, they assigned bad intentions to us. They thought we thought they were dumb. It brought up bad memories. So we're going back to basics a little bit. We don't let the extra stuff go through as much as we used to. So I invite you to look at your own content with some of these things in mind, and maybe do some quick wins. If you have some of this in your own content, take it out, please. Think about, I didn't get to go into this, but greetings and closings of emails are very market specific. So you can go awry pretty quickly there too. So take a look, and absolutely, anytime you have any opportunity to talk to your users, your customers, do it. They will surprise you every single time, I promise. And if you are ever tempted to enchant your audience with small flightless birds, don't do it. Thank you.